right, Sophie King Cool here with Robert Berry. How you doing, man?
I'm good. How are you?
Real good, real good. So, just speaking to you before
What's the weather like there today? Weather good today?
Yeah, actually, it is. It's in the high 80s.
Yeah, it's been hot there, huh?
Yeah, it's been pretty nice, actually. I'm a summer guy. I like the hot water.
All right.
What about you? How's the weather for you?
Well, actually in California, it's always in the 80s. It could be, the dead of winter. And we always have 75 to 85. It's been 92, 94 the last couple of days, kind of a heat wave.
Right.
So it's a little bit hot for here, which, sounds wonderful. But when you're used to being just warm enough, it's hot. And we have no humidity, though, so it's not too bad.
Yeah, we got two seasons here. It's either summer or it's winter for 9 months.
Yeah. I know. Yeah, it's hard to travel there in the winter time, too.
Oh, for sure. But as we were talking before, I understand things are going good for you. They're offering you some more tour dates. Is that right?
Yeah, the tours are really lining up. We're doing 5 long dates on the West Coast here to get things going. But really where the music lovers seem to be, and more venues than we have out here, is the East Coast. I mean, the doors have just been opened, and we got 24 shows or so. We've got a few in Canada, and I'm pretty excited about it.
Good for you, man. Good for you. How do you like being on the road?
I love it. I've got to say, my problem is I love everything about sort of the music life. I love being in the studio. I mean, that's sort of my day job, Monday through Friday. A new artist will come in, a local artist usually, and will birth their child, their song, and try to get it what I call radio ready, although that means a whole lot of different things today. So, I love doing that. I love playing live, especially being with the band, like for a month in a small bus, touring around and playing the venues and getting to meet the people that have supported my career for over 30 years. Not everybody gets to do that, so I'm kind of honored that I've been able to book, or the managers book so many venues. People are buying tickets. It's nice.
Now, when you're working with a new artist, sometimes are they in awe about all the great musicians that you played with throughout your career?
When they come in the studio, my studio is like a museum. It has instruments all the way back from the 60s, since my dad had the box guitar store here. So I have old Super Beetle amplifiers and all kinds of guitars, a Hammond B3, just a bunch of old stuff. Then I have the latest Pro Tools and synth modules, all that stuff. So they kind of see a full spectrum of music for the last, the 60s is a long time ago, right?
Right.
Those instruments, they go, whoa, where'd that? Oh, there's the Moog from the early 70s. Wow. They get that. And then on the wall, I have pictures of all the bands I've played with, Sammy Hagar, Ambrosia, of course, Keith Emerson, Carl Palmer, just kind of up there. And when they sit down, it's not like they're in awe. They sit down and they think, I think this guy's going to be able to do what I need to do. And that starts out the psychological part of the session, kind of, where I can say, okay, now, who are you going to knock off the charts? What do you want to be, where you're heading? Let's hear your song. And we just start a conversation. And I don't really get people in awe that I'm working with. I get them where they feel more comfortable because they're there to do their art.
Right.
They're expecting me to bring even more through them than they know because I've had so much experience. I call it my toolbox. My toolbox is really full. I majored in music in college even. I sang opera. I did orchestrations. I had 8 years of classical piano lessons. That way before I ever started to be in a band. So, yeah, my toolbox is very full. I could usually bring something out of people that they don't even recognize in themselves, and then they leave going, wow, I didn't think we'd get there with this. This is really great. This is really what I wanted. And there's not a bigger reward in music for me than to facilitate somebody else's art the way they want it to be, according to my expertise or my level of musician, whatever you want to call it, the standard I want to set for them. So it's all good.
Now, speaking of your toolbox, you mentioned you have stuff from the 60s all the way up to now with like the Pro Tools, the current stuff. What do you prefer to use, the older stuff or the newer stuff?
I still have a 2-inch tape machine. I have my mix-down tape machine that I bought when I first opened the studio, mid-'80s. right? And I don't turn it on anymore because the digital has become such a great sound, and it captures. Of course, I still have an old analog board. The first board I bought, a Neotech console, a great sounding console, and it sounds like a Neve, which is the state of the art for the industry. Like way back in the Beatles would use a Neve, at Abbey Road. So my console has that kind of sound. What has happened in digital recording is the analog to digital conversion and the software itself has caught up with way back sound-wise, which sounds kind of odd, but, things just sounded better on 2-inch tape and analog boards than they do with all the digital stuff. But now the digital can capture that sound if you already have an analog board, and of course use great microphones and great guitar amps, and it takes the whole chain to do it, but still the Pro Tools now can capture the sound you put into it. So I only use Pro Tools. My 2-inch machine holds a clock. It's like a clock holder. Look what time it is.
Right.
It's time for dinner.
Now, let's talk about the rules have changed.
Yeah.
Tell me the emotions that went through when you got to actually finish the album.
I wasn't going to finish it when Eleanor Emerson, his ex-wife at the time, but they were still good friends, let me know that he had died. I didn't know what to think. We were right in the middle of doing this dream of mine for 27 years at the time of doing a second 3 album, and of course doing an album with Keith. Because I would always say, people say, "Oh, you got this new album, you got that album." I said, "Yeah." I said, "But I know I have my Sgt. Peppers in me," and the reference, or their greatest album, the sort of change music, And I know I still have it. I just don't know what it's going to be. I know it'll be a progressive album. And there it was. I was working with Keith, and we were doing some stuff that I thought was just exactly what it should be. Showed him off for his greatness, and still he could play, he could create. He had everything he always had. And I felt I had learned a lot over the 27 years and come a long way with all kinds of things, and could bring the new stuff I was doing, the Pro Tools, the rhythms, working with Sammy Hagar and people with, more rock and whatever it was. I could bring that to the picture, and we really had the plan laid out. And then all of a sudden I get this call, he's gone. So I said, there's no way I can finish this. Oh my God, what am I going to do? I mean, I can't do it. So 6 months later, I thought, well, this material sitting here, I wonder if his son would want to do it just as something sort of get it done, and it'd be nice to work with Aaron. And I asked Aaron, and he said he'd love to. And I sent him the song One by One that we had, maybe halfway completed at the time. And it starts with this horrendously hard piano part. And Aaron called back. He goes, "Oh, that's my dad. I can't play that style. That's way beyond me." So what it had done for me, at least talking to him about it, is I revisited the material for the first time 6 months later, and I realized we had so much of it done in the planning stages and 20% of Keith's keyboards. And I looked back and said, I was the voice and half the songwriting on the first 3 albums. Keith was the sound of it, with his keyboard sound and the instruments we used, samplers and all stuff at the time, and half the writing. And Carl was the drummer, but as far as the real sound of 3, Keith and I had all the components. And we had talked about using Simon Phillips on drums anyway. So I thought, well, maybe I'll just try finishing this myself. Not to release, not to anything. It's just that my dream was to do another album with Keith Emerson, and I'll have that. So when it got done, it took me a year to do it. I actually let a few people hear it, and they were saying they thought it was really good. And so I let the record company hear it, bugging me. And they said, we have to release this. We have to release this. I just don't feel good about releasing it. I don't know if it's good or bad. I spent so many hours working on it, I don't have the perspective. I sent it to a girl in Scotland who used to work with Keith as a great pianist, who would definitely tell me it sucked in Keith Emerson terms, and it wouldn't bother her to tell me that. And she sent me back an email. Well, you got to do these things. I don't want to. I feel like you need to protect genius. And Keith was the genius. His music still is genius. Who he is, what he was, how he played was the best of the best. and you don't want to put a black mark on that legacy. So I was worried about that. This comes out, and if it's not as good as I think it is, or if people tell me it is, or she just wrote me back an email that said, how did you do this? How did you do those solos? Because she knew that Keith had not got far enough to play the solos. She goes, I can feel him in the music. And I'm like, whoa. That was the best thing anybody could say to me. So I told the record company, okay, let's put it out. I've checked a few people, and Rolf Runlinger runs the 3 Facebook page. He just thought, this has to come out. This is the right thing to do, and the music's great. But he's so into everything that was Keith calling me and really knows the history. I thought, he's going to like it. He's not going to want to hurt my feelings. But this girl, I knew that she would cut me right the kneecaps if she had to. So it came out, and the response, it came out, and in August, it'll be out a year, and I'm still doing, I did 10 interviews a week to start with. Even did a press tour in Europe where during 1 week about 20 different magazines and writers came to the hotel, and they had a press room for me, and I was doing a lot of press. And, if I say 150, it's probably more like 200. I'm doing 5 a week still, and we're going to end it this month as far as interviews on the album and the music, and just start promoting individual cities tour-wise, because I need to get those people out there to see the act. I have a great band put together, and they're going to do my 30-year history of music, which entails the first 3 albums, the 3.2 album, and everything in between. So it's quite an undertaking.
Now, when you go ahead and you play the songs from The Rules Have Changed live, is it emotional for you to go back to all that?
I'll tell you what's emotional is I'm having to learn them now. When you record them in the studio, you make up these parts, and if you're a creative person with ideas, they kind of flow out of you, and as they flow out, you try to perfect them. But it's not like you really learn them. The creativity it happens. So then, when you have to play it on stage, you have to learn it. I have, from the first 3 albums, a manuscript that Keith wrote out for Paul Keller, the guitar player, myself, and himself, of every note and chord and everything on the album and on our tour of the songs we're going to play. Because he needed to learn what he did, too, on the first 3 albums before we went out and play it live. So I'm actually, right now, packaging that as a songbook that I'm going to have available on the tour as a merch item, because it's in his own hand. It's every song we did. It's a real piece of history. It's a cool thing. I'm so happy to have, and I think, some other people might want to have this.
Yeah, that'd be awesome to get a hold of.
Yeah, and print in book form. I'm only going to have maybe 25 hard copies and 100 that are paperback songbooks, because I'm not doing it to make a bunch of money, but there's only going to be a few people that want to pay what it costs me to have the hard copies bound and everything, that really want to have that. And once they're gone, they're going to be gone. It's just a special item. People can talk about it if they can't get one. And I'm kind of excited about it, really, because that's something I've had just tucked away all these years. But I'm happy to learn my 30 years of music from the GTR that was before 3 with Steve Howe. Having to learn that, I'm having to refresh up on the 3 songs. I did play those live. I have my whole Magna Carta tribute series of Carnival 9 from the LP and Roundabout from Yes, things I've never played live that were kind of fan favorites for Magna Carta Records. I'm putting all those out there. I'm having to learn everything over again. So there is no playing it live and how's it feel. You know what I am? I'm nervous. I'm working hard.
Now, how do you go about picking out the set list? I mean, you've worked with so many great artists. You have so many hit songs. I mean, how do you squeeze everything into to a show?
I'm trying to do a little bit from every album. And like, say the first 3 albums. Desde La Vida is a song that people love, and even the ELP fans feel it's one of Keith's greatest works, along with Pirates and Carnival 9 and all of that. That's quite an honor. So definitely going to do that. Talking About was our top 10 hit, so I have to do Talking About. No One Else to Blame is the first song I wrote with Steve Howe. That's always been a favorite of mine, and anybody that got Pilgrimage to a Point always mentions that in a song called Last Ride Into the Sun, which was written for the second 3 album, and I brought it to the meeting that Keith, Carl, and I had when Keith broke up the band, basically, because he was getting pressure from his fan base really affected him. He was affected by fan criticism. As people know, even in the later years, he took it very, very harshly. So I wrote Last Ride to the Sun to try to bring it all back together, and that became a fan favorite for people who like Three, but wanted them to be more progressive and a little more ELP and Asia meets Yes kind. That song fit that mold. So I'm doing that song. And, of course, my Magna Carta tribute series, and then I mentioned ELP and Yes, but there's Jethro Tull, Mr. McGallery, Genesis, Watchers of the Sky. I've done re-imaging of these songs where it stays true to the original writing and melody, but they're tougher and they have more of a groove to them, kind of bringing them into the 90s to 2000s. Never been done live. And then, of course, I had a solo album out on Frontiers called Dividing Line. I'm doing a song from that and doing 2 songs from 3.2. And there's the history, and I have about 80 other songs I should be doing, but
I can't squeeze them all in there for sure.
Yeah.
Now, with you being friends with Keith for over 30 years, towards the end, did you notice anything off about him, or was there anything different?
You know, the only thing I noticed, and I said it to him a couple times, I said, "You're Keith Emerson. What are you talking about? You can decide whatever you want." He'd go, and he'd say, "Well, nobody cares anymore." And that was the only thing that I really heard from him. And honestly, I feel that when he moved to California, the band he had and the non-success he kind of had, he did some tours and he played, but he didn't really have great albums. He had better albums with Greg and Carl, Black Moon, and the ones he did on his own with the Keith Emerson band weren't kind of up to the standard of a genius. Not his fault, but just you put the whole unit together, it wasn't Greg Lake, driving the bus, and Carl Palmer giving it the pulse to it and all those fancy drum things. It just wasn't that. And I think that sort of drug down his value in the music world a little bit. And I said this a lot lately because it's been bothering me. You have to nurture a genius. You have to take care of them. Our geniuses, the people that have special things that they do, we have to be careful. We can't criticize them all the time if they try to make a change and try to do something a little different. We have to say, well, okay, let's see what they come up with. I mean, this guy's a genius. There must be something good coming out of it. Instead of saying, oh, you should just do what you used to do, or, what you're doing now is crap. In Europe, the companies and the managers wouldn't do that to Keith Emerson. To here, we're sort of a flavor of a month kind of thing. And I'm not talking about the fan base. The fan base, they love the genius stuff. They love Carnival 9, Desert La Vida. They don't care so much for the package. It doesn't have to be packaged like a top 10 hit for the fan base like Keith Emerson. But the business and the managers and stuff, they don't know how to deal with a real artist. They want to deal with Britney Spears, And I think it hurt him actually living here, and which is kind of sad for me because he got his love for California from working with Three and being in my studio here in Campbell and Los Gatos, California, and he had friends here. I like to say that this is Silicon Valley, and a half mile one way is Netflix, half mile the other way is eBay, and 2 miles one way is the new Apple complex, that big spaceship they built out of glass, kind of, a whole universe. I mean, it's all right here. Plus, there's lakes. He liked to go boating. He bought a motorcycle. There are all kinds of things that made it nice for him to be here. And then he moved to Santa Monica, closer to L.A., and I just don't think it was the right place for him to be supported and to remain the king that he was of the keyboard like they would have treated him in Europe. So that is one thing I felt coming through when I talked to him. I told him, I said, they really want this album. He goes, well, see what they'll offer. And they offered Keith a lot of money. And I called him back and said, well, I got you this much money. He goes, you should be my manager. Who has that kind of money anymore? And again, I said, you're Keith Emerson. They want this album. They want the second Three album. And he goes, oh, nobody cares anymore. I said, come on, Keith, you're Keith Emerson. Don't talk like that. You have a special talent. They want it, and they want what we're doing together on this album because they love the first Three albums. And I never thought that wasn't hitting home. It always seemed to pacify the conversation. Of course, we were working on music and stuff. Once I called the company to say that Keith and I would accept their offer, I actually told them that Keith wanted $10,000 more. And I didn't tell Keith I was going to do that, and I wasn't sure I was going to do it, but the more he said nobody cares, basically nobody values what he does, and it's hard for him to get anywhere these days, the more I felt like, well, I got to prove to him that he's wrong. That's why I talk about taking care of genius, right?
Right.
You know, Keith wasn't a good businessman. He wasn't a good finance man. He was a great keyboard player and a wonderfully funny and great guy. But when it came to taking care of himself, that wasn't his forte. So we had to do that, take care of him. So I told the company, well, Keith agreed to everything except for he wants another $10,000. I say, you got it. Just like that. Boom. This is Frontier Records. They're a great record company that really wanted this album. I called Keith back and I said, well, they accepted everything. Total artistic control. We have a year to do it. They just want to make sure it's the second 3 album. And I said, by the way, I got you another $10,000. She goes, what? You should be my manager again, I said, oh, Keith, you have a much better manager than me. I'm just a dumb musician. But again, I said, you're Keith Emerson. And that never seemed to really get a response that you're Keith Emerson. Like, he was feeling like that was no big deal. So, and no matter what I felt or what the fans felt, it was what Keith felt that made that final decision, basically. He felt he didn't have the value that he used to have. And I really had no idea. You have to remember, too, that we were creating music, and I got him a really good chunk of money, and myself, too. And this was kind of his happy place, that hour or whatever we'd work. And we worked on our phone a lot from my studio. And he had a Casio Digital Grand in his room there. And I had one in front of my Pro Tools. And we'd sort of jam back and forth on things and ideas. It was his happy place.
Well, that album came fantastic. I mean, I've heard it. Everything about it. It's magical, so to speak.
I appreciate that. It definitely was magical doing it. When it came out and people were connecting to that piece of it, that, I don't want to sound too artsy-fartsy, but that Keith was sitting next to me when I was finishing that album. He was really there in some way guiding me and stuff. That it came through sort of amazed me because I didn't want to really talk about it. And I thought, people are just going to think I'm weird, Yeah, Keith was guiding me. Well, there's so much on there that I had to play that isn't what I would normally play.
Right.
It's what I would play in 3. I guess if I was the keyboard player, and if I was Keith Emerson, I would maybe think like that. But I was thinking like that, sitting by myself in the control room. And I'd have these imaginary conversations. And I'd say, well, this, that. And I'd say, what did Keith say? What he'd say, no. We got to modulate that. Or we need to do this. And those things came through to the listeners, and that just amazed me. It was something.
Well, I mean, it really is like the finishing piece to his legacy. I mean, you really did a great job.
Well, that's important to me, to think that the last thing he ever worked on represents him in a good way, in a good light, and shows, because 5 of the songs were written, only 20% of his keyboard stuff, they were still written.
Right.
And shows his genius, and I really appreciate you saying that. It means a lot to me. As I've said, I didn't want to put a black mark at the last thing he ever did. How I feel right now, people would say, well, that was crap. Why would Keith even work with this guy? What's that all about? Gee, there's no way that Keith would have done this. This is junk. I'd be feeling pretty bad right now about that. Having to kind of forget about it, which wouldn't be easy for me to do because I tend to not dwell on things, but I care about things, So it is nice for me that almost a year later that you're saying the kind of stuff you're saying right now is really fantastic.
Well, I mean, I truly believe that if he didn't do what he did, this would have been the resurgence of his career. But at least, with that being said, you went out and showed everybody, look what you guys been missing for this time. He's always had it. It's always been there. And you went and showcased everything, and you made, like I said, I'll say it again. It's literally magical listening to this.
That's fantastic. Well, you have to take care of genius, and that was important to me. And I think that probably is what's showing through, that I cared about what he was capable of. There's a video from a couple weeks before he died that he put together for the Japanese show where he's playing that Casio piano in his bedroom. And he's playing great. He's really playing really great stuff. And obviously he could still play, but he could still create and come up with all the good stuff is what the 3.2, he was still viable. That's what 3.2 shows.
Now, people want to know about this tour. They want to see you live. They want to get the album. What's the best way to get everything about Robert Berry?
RobertBerry.com. Just go to the website. All the tour dates are on there, except for the ones where contracts aren't finalized. The place is finalized, but without the contract, the manager, this guy, he's like a dog on a left piece of meat. He's not going to let me put on the website, hey, these guys got to sign this contract.
Right.
Which is good, right? But some of those places will be on there, but it sort of says to be announced, like maybe it says Boston, to be announced kind of thing. And but I know all the venues they're ready to go. It's tough in this business. Everybody's so busy. And, of course, these places, I'm trying to play small places because I want it to be not only successful, but I want to be able to see the people that have supported me all these years, shake their hand, let them see something that everybody won't see. And the small venues, they have to make sure they're making money. And these guys work hard. I tell you, they really work hard making sure that their venue, has viable acts and acts that can keep them alive. So I think that's why it takes a little more time to get them all signed up.
Now, when you're doing your live show, do you tell stories about the songs and about the performers that you did them with and how it came about, or is it just straight music?
No, there's going to be some stories about, like with Steve Howe and stuff, I have so many good things happen in my life. I call myself the luckiest guy you never heard of, right? Because people don't know me as much as they know my time with Keith and Carl, my time with Steve Howe, Ambrosia, David Hagar. They know the acts I've toured with and everything. But when you just say Robert Berry by itself, sometimes they go, I know that name. And so I can't talk about every story, but every 2 or 3 songs, I'm gonna make a point out of what was going on and something we were doing, like practicing in Keith's barn and talking about, there'll be some photos and stuff. Yeah, definitely, it's hard storytellers to her.
Now you're almost like one of the actors that are in hundreds of films. You know the face, but you don't know the name.
Right. That's exactly right. I mean, it's a perfect analogy. Yeah.
But I'm looking forward to the tour. I love the album. I'd love to be able to get my hands on one of those books if I happen to see you live, that's for sure.
Well, they're going to be there, and like I think I'm trying to have one for every venue, and thinking though that I don't think everybody's going to buy one of those, even if they're only going to be $10. I'm not sure what it's going to cost me quite yet, but to print these things isn't cheap.
Well, for sure.
I don't need to make any money on them. I just want to put them out there, make them something special for people to have. It's kind of cool. It's all in Keith's hand, and it shows some of the synthesizer settings and stuff on it, right with the notes at the top, and exactly what he played. It's very well written. The cool thing is it's quite neat.
Yeah, I mean, it sounds awesome for sure. It's, for a true fan, that's something that you'll never get a chance to see. I mean, especially with this day and age, with everything being digital, you don't even get a CD hardly anymore, let alone to have a...
Well, and you know what else they do? In my Pro Tools, I can actually play, if I would play the keyboard part Powerful Man, let's say, at the new album,
okay,
in MIDI, I can change that MIDI to print out the notes on sheet music. Digitally, and it's all perfect, like sheet music that you buy in a store where they've done it pre-made notes and stuff, and they paste them on. So it's perfect music, but it's not in my hand, it's not in Keith's hand. It's MIDI notes made into visual notes on the staff. This is actually Keith sitting down and writing them out.
Yeah, that's
it's so cool.
That's awesome. Yeah, I mean, that's something you rarely get a chance to see this day and age.
Yeah, so I'm pretty excited about that. I mean, if it turns out where just everybody has to have it, I'll, make some available on the website so people can order if they want to, then I can just order some more. But it's a huge investment for me, but it's just something, again, it's protecting that genius. I think people that really love him will want to have this. And it's just part of, you just have never seen him writing out something so perfectly and everything so he can learn it.
Right.
He's listening back to the recordings, and he's learning it from there as he's writing it out. So it's crazy, And when he first brought that book to me, I'm like, whoa, you wrote out the whole set? Yeah. Wow, I had no idea he worked that way when it came to live. Usually we just kind of listen and learn and put in the memory banks, like me with the whole set. I mean, I have to have lyrics, because I can't remember all the lyrics, but as far as the notes and the chords and stuff, we're just figuring them out and relearning it. But no, he wanted it to be perfect. He was really about doing that 110% job and playing only the way Keith Emerson could play.
Well, I mean, it's good. It's amazing that you're giving fans something actually tangible to put in their hands in the last chapter in the legacy of his life.
Yeah, I'm excited about that. I think it's a real special item. So I'm glad that now you're the first person I've told that to, by the way.
Oh, awesome.
I haven't wanted to talk about that a lot. And since I'm going to stop doing album promotion interviews, and just the last couple things before the tour, I thought, I'm going to mention this and see what people think. And wow, the first one I've mentioned to you gives me kind of a shot in the arm, like, ooh, this is maybe even a better idea than I was thinking, because it sounds like it'd be important to you.
Oh, definitely. I mean,
my 3.2 thing is I want it to be important to the fan base of Keith Emerson, and the three and everything, myself, of course, too, but mainly that this guy's gone, and there's still things to be had and ways to cherish his contributions to music, and that's one of them, I think. So that's cool.
Yeah, it's really cool, man. Yeah, that's awesome. But Robert, I thank you for your time. Everything about we've talked has been amazing. It's a real honor to get a chance to talk to you and hear these stories and get the scoop on the book that you're doing for everybody. And like I said, I personally think everyone's going to want to get their hands on this. It's not, you're going to have people fighting in line over who gets to get the couple copies that are available at these shows.
Well, then I can hear already, I'm going to get all these complaints on my website when people send in and go, I'm trying to learn this, it's way too hard. Sorry, it's the way Keith played. Good luck.
Right.
All right, man. Well, I appreciate your time, too. I really do, and we'll probably be coming close to you, so maybe I'll meet you in person when we're out there.
Well, that'd be awesome, man. I'll be looking forward to that.
Okay.
All right, man. You take care.
You too. Thanks.
Yep. Bye.